Hey everyone, welcome to the series of Python programming. This is part 3 of Python basics, and we are going to learn about input, output, typecasting, comments, and indentation in Python. So let's get into the video. Input and output. For every program, it is said to have input and output. Let us take an example of ChatGPT. So, when you open ChatGPT, there is an option to enter the text. So, what do? You enter whatever query you have. So, that is the input that you're giving to the ChatGPT. ChatGPT will take that input, will process it, and give you some output. So this is one of the example of the program taking input and then processing it and producing some output. So every program does that, and in Python there are two functions that are used for the input and output. One is the input function, which is used in the process of taking input, and the other is the print function, which is used to display the output to the user. So let us look at each of them in detail. So input function is used to take input from the user at runtime. So this function will pause the program and wait for the user input. For example, there are like 20 lines in the program, and the input function is present in the third line of the program. So when the Python code will be executed in the third line, the input function will stop the program. It will display the output to the user, asking the user to enter some data, and until the user will enter the data, it is very simple. Just write input and then put some parenthesis and write some text message inside it, which is enclosed inside double quotes. There is a small example. We take a variable called age and we write input enter age. So we are using the input function and we are printing a message called enter age to the user. So the program will wait for the user to enter the input. So suppose the user enters input called 15. Now you want to print that 15, but you want to add 5 to that. So you don't want to just print whatever the user inputted. You want to add 5 to that and print it. So when you do print age plus 5, you are getting error. The code is not being executed. You will get some error. That is because, as we saw here earlier, the input function will always return a string. So here what is happening, you're trying to add 5, you're trying to add integer value to a string, so of course you're going to get error. So what you will do, you will just put int in front of the age variable. That means you're converting the string into the integer data type, and now when you do plus 5, you will get output as 20. It is not 2, it is 20. Okay, so this is how the input function will work. Next you have the print function. So this print function is used to display the output to the console. And what is the syntax? Print object 1, 2, so on, a separator and end. But we never used this separator and end till now, right? That is because even if you don't explicitly write separator and end, there are some default values that Python considers. So the default value for separator is a space, for end is slash n. Now what does that mean? I'll explain it to you. Suppose we write print 12 comma 13. Now what will be the output? The output will simply be 12 and 13. So this comma will not be printed, only the space will be printed, right? That is because the default value of separator is space. So when you write 12 comma 13, this indicates that this is object number 1 and this is object number 2. So the separator by default, it will print a space. Now suppose you write another print statement, print 14 comma 15. Now this 14 and 15 won't be printed in the same line, they will be printed in a different line. That is because the end value by default, it is new line. That means after this print statement gets executed, the control will automatically go to the new line. So 14 and 15 won't be printed here, but rather they'll be printed here. So even if you don't explicitly mention this separator and end value, the Python will default have some values. Now suppose you don't want to have the default value, you want to use a specific value to print. So for let us take this as example 12, 13, and separator, suppose you want this hyphen, and then the end value, you don't want new line, you want some spaces, you want tab space. This is like four spaces, right? A tab is equals to four spaces. So now when this print statement gets executed, the output will be 12 hyphen 13, and then the control will move four spaces and it will stand here. Now suppose when you do print 14 and 15, now the 14 and 15 will be printed here, because the control didn't go to the next line, rather it just moved a tab space. I hope you understood this. So we have this really simple example over here. Print 1 Python, 2 Java, separated this and this. This is integer object, this is integer object, this is a string, this is a string. And the separator is this arrow mark. So 1 will be printed and then this arrow mark. After every object, the separator is printed. Now Python is printed, arrow mark 2 is printed, arrow mark, and then at last Java is printed. Alright, let us code it and check. So we'll check both the input function as well as the print function. Okay, we'll take a variable called age, and we want to take input from the user. We'll just write input parenthesis and then double quotes, and here we'll write enter age, and then we just want to print the age value, right? When you run it, so here the program is paused and it is asking for user input. The user never enters the input, the next statements will not be executed. The program will be paused here itself. So when the user enters an input, for example 5, and when you press enter, the 5 is printed. Now let us check this. We'll add age plus 5. So now it is asking enter age. When you enter 5, you're getting error. This is a type error. Can only concatenate string, not integer to string. As we have discussed, the input function will always return a string. So you cannot add string and integers, right? Suppose you want to add plus high. Now let us see what happens. Enter age, will enter 5. So it is adding 5hi. So it is doing concatenation. It is combining 5 and hi together because this is a string. And if you also want to check it, you can just type of age, and then when you run it, enter age, and when you press enter, it is giving a string. Age is an object of class string. Now let us check how to use the separator and end in the print statement. So we are writing print 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma 5, and then we want to add the separator as underscore, right? We'll write the separator equals to, and then write double quotes, and inside double quotes we'll write whatever the special character that we want, and then we'll write end equals to double quotes and tab space. Now we'll just comment this out and we'll run it. So as you can see, after every object the underscore is being printed. Now you don't want underscore, maybe you want a dollar sign. So you just have to include that dollar sign in the separator, and then after every object that dollar sign is printed. Now we'll write a new print statement. Here we'll just leave it space, or we'll write this hyphen and this one also hyphen. Now let us run and check. Okay, so here our tab space is printed. Tab is nothing but four spaces, and the second print statement is also printed on the same line. Now what happens if you don't include this end? We'll just remove the end and then run it. So as you can see, the default value of end is a new line. So after this print statement is executed, the control will go to the next line. Okay, and in the next line the value in the print statement is printed. Now what happens if you don't write this separator? We'll remove the separator and check it. So as you can see, space is printed because the default value of separator is a space. So real world example, I think we have already looked at ChatGPT, and another example is YouTube search bar. When you go to YouTube and you search maybe Python, then all the videos related to Python will be displayed. So the input here is Python and the output is a display of the videos related to Python. So the next concept is typecasting. So typecasting refers to converting value from one data type to another data type. That can be be conversion from integer to a float number or a string to an integer, right? So there are two types of typecasting. First one is implicit conversion and the second one is explicit conversion. So implicit conversion happens automatically, that is int plus float will automatically be converted to float, whereas explicit conversion should be done manually. That means the programmer has to specify from which data type to what data type the conversion has to happen. Python provides built-in functions for this. First, let us check at the implicit conversion. As you can see, result equals to 5 plus 2.0. 2.0. Here 5 is an integer and 2.0 is a float number. So when you do integer plus float, the result is automatically converted to float. So when you run it, you'll get 7.0 as output. Now there is an explicit conversion as well. So here int of 42. So here 42 is enclosed in double quotes. That means it is a string. So we want to convert this string into integer. Since the string contains the numerical value, like instead of a, b or something like that, it has numbers 4 and 2. So this is possible. The string can be converted into integer. And now here you have 3.14, but it is enclosed in double quotes. That means it is a string. So here string can also be converted into float. And you also have 100 of string. 100 is an integer and it can be converted into string. So boolean of 0. So 0 is an integer, but we are converting into a boolean value. So in boolean value, 0 means false and 1 means true. And then you have empty string. This also can be converted into boolean value, that will turn out to be a false value, right? And then we still didn't learn about the list data structure, which we'll be learning in the coming videos. But yeah, this string can also be converted into list. Simple example that we have already seen earlier. By using the input function, age equals to input enter age, and when age is entered, for example 5, this 5 is not integer, rather it is a string. So this input function will always return the string. So in age, the 5 string is stored. So when you try to add an integer value to string, you'll get a type error. So you first have to convert it into integer. So you just write the data type name and in parenthesis you include this variable, and so the string 5 will be converted into integer 5. So let us look at it in the code. So we'll just remove this and then uncomment this. So input enter age. Now we know that this input function will return a string. Now if you want to add 5 to this, you'll get a type error. So age, I'm writing 15, so you're getting type error, can only concatenate string, not int to string, right? So what we'll do, we will typecast it explicitly so that it will become a integer. So we'll do age equals to int of age. So we are converting the age into integer data type. Now when you try to run it and enter age as 15, you're getting 20 as output. So the 5 is successfully being added to the age because it is now converted into integer, right? This is now, where is this typecasting used? We just saw how to convert that string into integer, right? So suppose you have a form. In that form, you were supposed to enter name and also age. So here the program will take the input using the input function name. You'll enter some name, and when it comes to age, maybe you'll enter some age, and this age is actually string, right? So you don't want to store the string in the age variable, you want to store the integer, right? So here you can typecast it manually into integer data type and then store it into the age. So the next part is comments and indentation. So comments are lines ignored by the interpreter, written for human readers. Now, why do we need comments? Here it is saying the comment lines are ignored by the interpreter. So they won't show up in the output of your code. The interpreter will not touch the comments, it will leave it as it is. So why do we need comments? Now imagine you and your friend are working on a project. So you wrote some 200 lines of code and your friend has written another 200 lines of code. When you try to look at your friend code, you don't understand any of it because everything is written continuously and you don't understand what part of the code is implementing what function. And your friend doesn't understand what part of your code is implementing what functionality. So when multiple people are working on a project, the comments is very important, which will give the information about the project. Now in the 200 lines of code that you have written, suppose for every part you'll mention a comment. You'll write, this is for implementing login, this is for taking input from the user, or any comment like that. So this comments will help your team to understand what does that part of code do in your project. Even though the comments do not show up on your output and it is completely ignored by the interpreter, it is still useful to use them to enhance the readability of your code. And next, so the comments can be a single line comments or multi-line comments. For a single line comments, you do it using this hashtag, and to write a multiple line comment, you use this triple quotes. Okay, now indentation. So what is indentation? Indentation is not cosmetic in Python. It defines the structure of your code. Wrong indentation is a syntax error. In Java, the indentation is done using these curly braces, whereas in Python, it is done using white spaces. So if you have ever worked with Java, you know that after every looping statements or any of that, you use curly braces to indicate that lines inside this curly braces belong to this block, right? So the same thing you can implement in Python using the spaces. So if you write any looping statements like for loop or something, you just add a semicolon and then you leave four spaces and write the statements inside and write the statements here. So these four spaces, or it is a tab space. So you can either press the space bar four times and give four space, or you can press the tab button and it will automatically give you the four spaces. So when you add the spaces, the Python will consider it that this statement will belong to this block, right? So if you want to write another statement inside this block, what do? You again give four spaces and then write the statement in here. But suppose you didn't give the space, you wrote it here. Then what happens? The Python will think that this print statement is not part of this block, it is a separate block. So indentation in Python is done using the white spaces. For small programs, this might not be an issue, but when you start writing bigger programs, then the indentation is very, very important, and you might get a lot of syntax errors if you don't take care of it properly. This is the end of the lecture. We have studied about input, output, typecasting, comments, and indentation. See you guys in the next video.